50. Yeah. It's 50 shades of life. Let's talk about your type. Are your pockets feeling light?
Does your man treat you right?
Is your sex game lame? Are you searching for some fame? Hey yo, cuz, let's talk about it. Sex health, music wealth, truth and self. I knew myself. Boy, you better not lose yourself. But let me mind my own black business. Running up these digits, fresher than them dishes.
Talia, grant your wishes. I'm a tarot reading witness.
Yeah. 5-0. Yeah, 50.
Welcome to 50 Shades of Life. What's up, y'all? We are back. Welcome to 50 Shades of Life, your lovely, lovely podcast. We are almost at a year, but just shy of a year right now. So this is chapter 22. This is a very, very, very unique episode. And I have my lovely, lovely, lovely cousin, aka co-host / Black Magnolia, Talia. What up, girl?
What up? It is I. I am black. I am she. She is I. No, she is me.
She is I.
She is me.
I said you to I am black.
Yes.
Some people may be like, is she really black? No, she's black. We all black.
Yes. Yes.
Speaking of black, so I just came back from vacation. I was able to link up with my cousin. So you guys are going to see some snippets, some videos, whatever. So I went down south, hit multiple cities and states while doing so. One of those states was actually in Mississippi. And Talia and I were able to link up in Natchez, Mississippi specifically. And we went and we toured an antebellum home. She has been to multiple before. This was my first because I never wanted to go to an antebellum home, which we will talk about that. So this is actually what this chapter is talking about, is the antebellum home that we saw. We were going to go see multiple. We did go to another one and they told us that there were no slaves ever, except for in the house at this location. So we did a little bit of research because one thing that we noticed, and this is what this conversation is about, is we went to this antebellum home to learn more, right? It's history, right? It may be the most negative history as a Black person we can encounter, right? Outside of things such as obviously, civil rights movements and, things of that sort, right? But it's something that we can definitely say, look where we came from, right? Mm-hmm. At this young, tender age, I think that's what you say, Talia, at this young, tender age, made a decision and said, you know what, I want to go and see these. And Natchez is known, if you don't know, it's Natchez, Mississippi, is known to be and was the richest plantation owners, slave owners across the entire United States. So they were, in terms of the number of millionaires during that time. Okay, this is before 1865, because that's when the war ended, right? They were like surpassing New York. All right. So let's be clear. There is so much history in that town. And, we have grown up and have always passed the antebellum homes. We have always seen the history and the value, including our family has history there, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, I want to go, right? But the problem was, when we got there, the house was gorgeous, right? And they didn't talk about nothing about the slaves. Like, am I lying to you? Like.
No, you're not lying.
How you gonna be in an antebellum home? And antebellum means pre-Civil War. Okay.
Yes.
What was the Civil War about? Slavery. So, how the hell are you gonna have an antebellum home and you're not talking about slaves at all?
No, and they're even taking plantation out of the names now because they're trying to transform it into like they're erasing history. And so, I don't even think I think they're just calling it Longwood now instead of Longwood Plantation. I'm like, let's call a spade a spade. It was a plantation. We're going to have to call it what it was. Let's not just say it's a historic site. Let's not just say it's a historic home. Let's call it what it was, a plantation. And so we got to do away with that. I don't like that at all. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And Talia has transitioned to be back in the South from where she was on the East Coast. So Talia, I wanted to ask you first though, before we get into the super details, how has your transition been? Has it been a year yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So how has that transition been from you to go from like the East Coast, even though she's been in multiple states and stuff like that on the East Coast, but how has it been for you moving back to the dirty?
I don't like it. I don't think.
What don't you like about it?
What do I like about it?
What don't you like about it?
Oh, what don't I like about it? There's it's not a lot to do, I will say. It's kind of boring, to be honest. Of course, that could be where I'm located, but it's not as many restaurants. It's not as well. We do have places to eat. There's one thing you're gonna do down here is get fat, which I have gained 10 pounds, or nothing. There's nothing. Like, you know how I was driving through the night, like yesterday at like 11, and I was like, everything was shut down. And I was like, oh man, I miss like being able to ride down the street and there's like people walking and there's still things opened and you could still see people. Like, I hate that. I hate the like, so I don't like that there's nothing to do. And that's mostly it, that there's nothing to do.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like I don't know, like when you come from like a major metropolitan area, you know what I'm saying? And then you come into, even if it's not necessarily the South, you could be in the West, you could be on the East Coast, you could be here in Michigan and go somewhere where it's rural, right? You know, you're going to transition to that type of atmosphere, but it still is like a different type of feel when you go from like the North to the South. And that was one thing, that was one reason why I really did want to go and see these antebellum homes, because I wanted to see, it's still amazing to me that these slaves built the Capitol all the way across the US, right? But they built from the North to the South to the East to the West with their hands, right?
Yeah.
Many of them still weren't even able to speak English. They couldn't read, they couldn't write, you know, but they were still able to, you know, do what they needed to do to implement these. Through all the pain, through all the heartache, through all the separation, the anxiety, the depression, just everything that they went through, these pieces still stand here 100+ years later, right? Stronger than some of the things that we are building today.
For sure.
It adds like a different level of, I don't want to say the word respect, because you always gonna have respect, you know what I'm saying, for them. Right. But it's a different level of feeling that you have. So when we first pulled up to the antebellum home, which the specific one we are talking about today is called Longwood, and we're going to say Plantation.
Yes.
And I feel like, and Talia, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have seen where, of course, across the US in the last 5 years, of course, it has come from Black people as well as other organizations where they do not want to see any more Confederate street names. They don't want to see any more Confederate, you know, pillars or monuments and things of that sort, to where they're like, take them down, whether it's in New Orleans, it's on the East Coast, wherever it is, right? They want them moved. So I understand that. And then you have some of the Caucasians who are saying, why? This is our history, but there's a thin line, right? I don't know if the reason why they are changing it to not say plantation, is it because of the Black people saying, hey, we don't want to keep living and walking down this same path. We are trying to move past this. Or is it the Caucasian folks that are over here trying to sweeten it and say, this is our history and we're only going to talk about our history. We don't want to talk about the negative stuff. We want to look past that. Or is it a blend? You know,
it's a blend. It's a blend. I think it's coming from both things, at least from what I've researched. It's both things. It's exactly what you said. It's some people who are like, well, it's history, we need to leave it there. And then it's the people that want to make it like the Gone with the Wind era, where it's just like this romantic period where slaves love to be slaves. And, you know, it's such a glorious time. So, yes, some people want to look at it in that way. And other people are like, I don't want to see it, tear it down. But I also want to say, it's not to me the same thing as leaving up a monument of a Confederate soldier. That's not the same thing, because to me, that's like a celebration of like a Confederate soldier. And then, you know, they basically made it like their thing is say it's legacy, it's history. But at the same time, when you're celebrating someone, it's saying that this is a person who wanted to uphold, albeit their way of living, but their way died out. They lost. So there shouldn't be those monuments there, in my opinion, of, well, that's why they're being torn down, because there's no reason to celebrate it. There's nothing to celebrate there. But that's different than leaving. I don't know. I guess I could see it both ways if we're making the argument. But I feel like celebrating and leaving, let's say, for instance, slave cabins. Right. You didn't see slave quarters, which I'm sure you're going to start talking about what we saw in just a moment. Yeah. But just for a second, just like tearing down slave quarters, or, you know, when you go on there, specifically like when we went to Longwood, there's no slave quarters. Now, obviously, it wasn't built with the same type of structure that the major big house was. So, of course, over years, it's going to deteriorate. But at the same time, I think those things need to be preserved because it's a part of the story. Yeah. So, and you're basically saying that what these people went through, we're just going to erase it. Yeah. We're just going to pretend like it wasn't there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
And I do see it both ways. Like, you know, driving past and seeing it growing up, and driving past different things like in New Orleans, right? That were, I think, like you said, the purpose of why it is it there to educate, or is it there to praise? You see what I'm saying? I feel like there's two different things, but I also think it depends on how you view it, how you see it, you know? But, you know, to move forward, I think I was let down by this being my first time in this situation where I go see this beautiful antebellum home. It is, if you guys look it up, Longwood in Natchez, Mississippi. It's Plantation. You can look on Wikipedia. It's in the National Archives. It's everywhere, right? And it's an octagonal mansion. It is the largest in the United States. It is gorgeous, but it is incomplete, which Talia would tell, you know, a little bit more of the history from their actual historical background and whatnot. So we were definitely given that. We were given, you know, welcome. This was constructed and started here. And we learned all about the history of the owners and of the wives' information. And we heard all about this. And we had this beautiful tour. And this was the floor. And it was a million bricks handcrafted. Didn't say by who. Handcrafted and made. And we heard all about the architects and how they were, you know, over here from the East Coast and all that. And I'm waiting for it was like waiting for like a punchline, you know, and it never came. And I was kind of like, you know, if y'all know me, I'm going to ask questions, right?
Yeah.
But I was waiting for a minute, like, okay, well, we're going to get to this. We're going to get to that. Because now I will say, let me take this back. I did tour in Virginia, I think Maryland, the presidents, past presidents, and, you know, Jefferson Davis and all that kind of stuff. I toured that. They have the slave houses. They have all the tools that they have used. They break it all down respectfully. Right. And that's what a lady there actually walked up to my mom and I and said, this is not what I expected. I expected to get a full tour. And this was a white lady. Right. Yeah. And she was like, I'm taken back. She was like, we're kind of just left here standing on this back porch. And like, she was like, he didn't answer none of her questions, meaning my questions. He didn't answer my questions. So
he did. He knew the facts. Yes, he did, because he's the one that
he did this. Here's my question. He did this.
Yeah, he did, but he gave you, yes, but you're right. So through the whole thing, we kept waiting and waiting. And listen, he didn't even bring up the Black butler, who they had a portrait of. Like, he didn't even reference him. I'm like, and you know what else I didn't like? So I get it from the architectural aspect of it, because it is a dream. It's a wonder. It's an interesting design, because remember how he said there's no hallways. So I could just imagine if they had constructed this entire thing. And listen, you guys, we're not glorifying antebellum. I mean, we're not glorifying slavery or anything like that. We're just talking about the architecture itself. Anyway, it was very interesting, and it would have been a marvel to see it finished. But yes, so he did express that part, but then he used words like, so I guess if you're viewing it from like the architectural thing, yes, it probably is a disappointment that it was never finished. But I think you have to be careful when you say things like that, because then you're not also referencing all the implications of slavery and people who were enforced laborers who had to build this thing because they had no choice, so
yes,
I don't know.
So tell us a little bit about the history, and just so you guys know, it's also called Nuts Folly, Nuts Folly. So tell us a little bit about Longwood.
Okay, so Longwood, yes, also known as Nuts Folly, which is, so he was building it, he constructed it in 1860, right? And in 1861, he had to stop because the Civil War began. And obviously there were rumblings and talkings about the Civil War, but he didn't think that it was going to happen. So I think that's part of the reason why they were thinking it was a folly as well, because he's doing this massive undertaking because it was supposed to be a display of his wealth, obviously the wealth that he made out of enforced laborers, right? And plantation and cotton. So yes, so there was supposed to be this glorious display of his wealth. And he just went ahead with it. And so they built it. They began building it in 1861. The structure is there of what it was supposed to be, but then it halted. They began building it in 1860, 1861. They had to stop. Mm-hmm. He actually died in 1864, before the Civil War stopped. And obviously the construction was never completed because they ran out of money and he lost his fortune. So the family existed in the basement of the house, which this is just not a regular basement, y'all. This is an extraordinary basement. But that's where the family lived, and we got to tour all around and see the floors and what it was supposed to be. Let me see. I did write some stuff down in case it was something I forgot. Oh, I wanted to say his name was Haller Nutt. Yeah. And Haller had 5 other plantations in Louisiana and along the coast. And he owned up to 800 slaves. Yep. All right. So this is how he was able to build Longwood.
All cotton. What else? It was all cotton. Yeah, all this was cotton. And
he's a rich planter.
He was one of the richest. And he was also married to the daughter, correct me if I'm wrong, the daughter of the richest. The richest plantation owner. So there was 100% money that was within that family circle. So yeah, it was. And I think it's funny because you mentioned that he died. He actually died short of, like you said, the end of the Civil War from pneumonia. Yeah. But yeah, it's Haller Nutt, Nutt. And he died in 1864, leaving it incomplete, which, like she said, y'all, that basement was stunning. I think he said it was like 32, 33 rooms or something like that in the
crazy
place. And we're going to share it. You guys can see right now, there's this video. As you can see here in this video, what we are looking at is actually the outside of the home of the plantation. It is an octagon, beautiful pillars. I mean, stunning. And it's sitting up kind of on a hill. And the basement is literally down below, which Natchez, Mississippi doesn't really have basements in their home. So for them to even construct this piece with a basement is quite unique. Then if you look above, you will see the inside of this place is magnificent. Like the amount of bricks and stuff. But if you're looking up at this video right here, right now, this is in like the middle. It's almost like the atrium of this plantation, of this home. And those are the parts that are incomplete. But the first floor was, and Talia, get into how he didn't want any hallways. Get into that part. That was crazy. That's the reason why it was an octagon, and it had this whole Oriental flair as well.
Yeah, he felt like it was a waste of space. So every room was connected to a room, connected to a room, connected to a room. And of course it went like this. But the thing is, it does have too many doors, in my opinion. Like, it's doors everywhere. So that's one thing I think that's a design flaw that I would say. Obviously, I'm not a architect, anything, but I feel like it was a ton of doors in that thing. So, but it was pretty gorgeous. But yeah, so it was, hallways were a waste of space, and that's why he wanted rooms connected to rooms. And he had that central room where we thought was interesting, just a piece of history, where they had the settee where women would faint on the sofa because their corsets were too tight. And so they would faint and fall down. So they had the fainting settee.
Yes. They would wear, if you guys would see, which I'll pull up this photo. So back then, of course, mind you, it is hot in Mississippi. Yeah. Okay. Yes. There is no air. They had no working plumbing inside. So there's right. I'll show even where she would even use the restroom. She did not want to share her restroom or anything like that, her bathroom, with her kids, her siblings, or whatever the case would be. So like Talia said, the picture that you see here, the video, it does show this fainting settee because the corsets on top of the heavy dresses themselves, on top of the heat, no circulation. And if you have ever worn a corset, okay, a waist trainer, a real one, or anything, and you're wearing this outside, forget working out for 45 minutes an hour. No, baby, you are walking around from morning at 6 a.m. until they go to bed at maybe 7 p.m. all day. With all these dresses and layers, which I don't know why they did it. This is probably why God said she don't need to be born in this era, because I would have cut up some stuff. It would not have worked well, whether I was white or a slave. I would have been dead.
Hey, you don't know, maybe.
I would have been dead day one.
Maybe your soul had a journey back there, darling.
My soul, from what I feel today. What I feel today, I would have been Harriet Tubman myself. Ain't no way. I would have been like how he said, one of the, I think, children. He went through the history of the whole family. We learned like literally the lives of their kids. I think they had 5 or 6 kids. One of them passed, and we learned out about the yellow fever or whatever it was. It was all these different things we learned about. We learned about all the pictures throughout the entire plantation that we saw in the basement. I think there were 9 rooms in the basement, and we went through every single one of the rooms. And Talia even said, Raquel, what is that? Right? Which you guys see here. This is the dining room area. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Table. And Talia goes, what was that? I knew what it was. I said, oh, that is the fan. And we know, if you know your history, right? Yeah. The slaves stood on the side and had to pull this down to fan the food to make sure that flies and the people remain cool.
Can you imagine that was your only job? Like, that was so whack.
And most of the time they used youth. Most of the time they used the youth to do this. And they just stood there all damn day long as they ate. Or
pulling the string to fan the flies for the white folks.
So he didn't say who was doing it. He said, oh, it's for the flies. And, because they would leave the windows open, which they have beautiful windows and all this kind of stuff. They would leave them open, and the way for them to, remain and keep the flies off the food was this way, but never said the slaves did it, So, and I'm like, okay, maybe he felt a certain kind of way because we were the only Black people out of 4 couples or 3 or 4 family members that were there. Maybe you felt a certain kind of way, but you should have also been intentional with saying certain things,
Yes, you should have. And that's why I said we're not going to erase history here. Like, you need to include those things as a part of history. I mean, it is what it is.
Yes.
And I don't think that you should be able to, like I said, you should be able to show the architecture. You should be able to show all of the, the different design features and all, but just tell the whole story is what we're saying. Just tell the whole story. Let me see if there was one more architecture thing. Oh, did you talk about the chair? The chair where you said the potty, where she had to potty in her chair?
Briefly. Yeah, just not briefly, but tell us what that was. And I'm going to show you guys right here. This is what we talking about, which is nasty as hell, but go ahead.
Oh my God. Can you imagine the smell? Oh my God. So she had to, well, obviously back in the day, so she had a potty chair, which was cloth, you guys, but it had, it had a lid, and you would take the lid off and, do your business inside of this bowl. And then I guess it was another slave, because I'm sure she wasn't dumping her own bowl. So I'm sure it was a slave's job to go and dump her business out into the yard, I guess. But they also had an outhouse that was built that was far off of the property, on the property, but far away from the house. The main house where you could go and do your business too. But she said she didn't like that because why she didn't want to have to share it in her dress and
too much privacy. And then they even said she would have issues, the mother that is, she would have issues with getting through some of the doors because her dress was so wide that she couldn't get into some of the doors and stuff like that. I'm like,
well, also you got to think about too. I was thinking about this. I mean, it's dark.
Yeah,
it is super, super dark when you have to get up in the morning. I mean, the sun is shining, but think about that. And we got to think about being in the South, snakes, mosquitoes, bugs. I mean, so yeah, I could see in that happen because it is quite far.
Yeah,
but I'm sure she would have had a slave accompanying her. She wouldn't have been going by herself. She probably had someone to hold her dress up.
That's right.
So I'm saying, like, you have to put all of those things into, and I'm sure that they have, now I don't know about this particular thing, we're just speculating here, but I'm sure if you go back and read like history journals and things like that, they probably list the different functions and what the roles of different slaves were, what they were supposed to do.
Yep.
I think they should include all of that. And if they're going to tour these houses, and I'm just going to say this too, they used to do it, but let me tell you guys, they used to do it in a different way, which was disrespectful. And I think that's why they have kind of gotten away from it, but now have gone too far. They used to do it like it was joyful, like it was an exciting thing, like it was, we're glorifying this. So they used to dress up in the dresses and put on the old garb and the dresses and the hats and like pretend that they were in that era.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was that one plantation. Yeah, there was that one plantation we were supposed, I can't remember the name of it. We were supposed to go and see.
It's called Frogmore.
Yeah, and they said they did it. And I wanted to go see it, but y'all, we ain't had the time. I was only there for so many days and we had other stuff to do. Were they actually in that garb there? Do you know?
I'm not sure, but I know that she said you can actually see the cotton, that you can actually pick a piece of cotton. So I don't know if there were people there, like dressed in those roles. That's a crazy role. I mean, everybody got to work, too. But that one, I'd be like, I don't know about that now. I'm not recreating. I'm not going to be a slave out here in these streets. Okay, but
look, y'all seen Janelle Monáe's movie. What was the name of the movie where they were yanking them and putting them back into slavery?
They were yanking them.
Yeah, they kidnapped them and put them back into like real life slavery.
You mean 12 Years a Slave?
No, Janelle Monáe, man, she was I'll find it. But regardless, I wanted to kind of go through. So I just read up on this. It says Longwood was featured in the Southern United States segment of Guide to Historic Homes of America and an in-depth production by Bob Vila for the A&E network. So you can
Bob Vila. You remember Bob Vila?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, back in the day. Okay.
In 2010, Longwood was used in the HBO series True Blood for the external shots of the fictional Jackson, Mississippi mansion of Russell Eddington, the Vampire King of Mississippi and Louisiana. It's on the National Historic Landmarks in Mississippi, the National Register of Historic Places listings in Adams County, Mississippi. There are You can go on a Natchez pilgrimage tour. They provide tours that include Longwood. You can create and, schedule your own. And what else is there? Yes. And Haller Nutt was a Mississippi cotton planter from 1816 until 1864.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
He was born on Laurel Hill Plantation, which was Mississippi Territory, February 17th, 1816. And he died June 15th, 1864. He went to the University of Virginia, occupation that says planter. But I want you guys to also look up his spouse. She came from money. And
we didn't talk about the piano.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the spouse, her name was Julia Augusta Williams Nutt. They had 11 children, correct me, 11, of which I think 2 passed. I mean, because, there was a lot that was going on back then. And they also went into, and this is what was the problem for me, is they went into the children to the grandchildren and even talked about how, parenting and, giving birth back then was so hard, right? Where even one of the children had actually passed, like the mother had passed during that time giving birth, and went into all those details. But as we walked into, as you guys can see, this wall right here, this room had all these photos of all these people. And there's a Black man, which you guys see here, which we just talked about. And as I zoomed in, and it tells you that he was a very important piece of this family.
Yes.
That's why they gave him this place on this wall. And this guy told us not a damn thing about this.
Not one thing. He didn't even mention him once. And I'm like, if he has a portrait, if the family felt like that he was that important that they needed a portrait of him, then why is he not included? Like, why can't we talk about his occupation? What was he, what is this about? So I don't understand the erasure of the slave. Like, let's talk about the realness of it. Let's talk about the entire story.
Yeah. And just really quickly, I looked up what were the different plantations that he owned. He returned to Mississippi and helped his father manage the Laurel Hill Plantation. Look that one up, another large location. And he developed and marketed a cotton cultivator called Petite Gulf beginning in 1841. He also developed and marketed a cotton cultivar. Yeah, I don't know. Developed as Egypto-Mexican. I don't know what that is. But his plantations included the Araby Plantation in Louisiana, Evergreen Plantation in Louisiana, Winter Quarters Plantation in Louisiana, Cloverdale Plantation in Mississippi, Laurel Hill Plantation in Mississippi, and of course the Longwood Plantation also in Mississippi, which is what we're talking about today. And he grew cash crops, including cotton and sugar cane. Brought him considerable wealth. He made a net profit more than $228,000 then, which as of 2023, that would be seen as $6.31 million in 2023. He owned, from his enterprises in 1860, he owned 43,000 acres of land.
Wow.
100 slaves. His fortune prior to the Civil War estimated more than $3 million. Now, the guy even did talk about this, was he lost everything, even though he died before the Civil War, but his family had nothing and lost everything because the Civil War, they yanked it all, right? He did not diversify. That's what we were told. He didn't diversify. You would have thought that, with this Civil War thing happening, that he would have said, let me put my money elsewhere. Let me do this. Let me invest in something else. This is what the guide said to us, right? But you have to understand that these people in the South that were these plantation owners felt like this was not going to actually work. They thought the Civil War was some BS, and they thought that we are going to win. And it's a lot of the same mentality that we have today with some of these other supporters that we're not even going to get into that whole thing. But they have the same exact mentality. and they didn't realize they were going to be defeated, and not only defeated, but terminated. So I'm just saying, we getting into my soapbox, but and it's like, well, that's why he lost everything. And maybe that's why he died actually before any of this even happened, but he lost everything. So therefore the house just sat dormant. And it wasn't until a family from the East Coast in the 2000s, I believe, they came in and they put rules and regulations when they kind of renovated the house. They tried to keep it exactly how it was from the ground, right, everything. And they have been very, very good at saying, do not finish this home. It is to remain exactly as is. And it is only made for and kept for historic and tour purposes. So we did learn that this family is very strict. The furniture cannot be moved, and Talia's going to get into the furniture. I mean, they had some heavy duty furniture, which you guys can see here in this video. Tell us where the furniture came from. What were some of the pieces that we saw? Because it was elaborate.
Well, I just thought, I have a couple pictures on my phone too about some of the pieces. They were very nice, very heavy, like you said, heavy duty beds. Those what do you call them? Are they 4-poster? Those the big tall, are they poster beds? But they have the huge beds, and they have which was particularly interesting was the piano. And I'm not mistaken. You correct me when you look at this, but did he say it was $1 million to get that thing shipped in today's money? I mean,
oh, I don't remember. I have to listen to.
But anyway, for it to get shipped, and if you go upstairs, when they take you upstairs, where you can see all the 5 levels, and they still have the piano box until this day that it was shipped on, or maybe it took a year for it to ship over. I'm not really sure, but it was quite expensive for them to ship this piano, which they do display and show in the basement of the house. For that's, they were rich, man. So they were shipping beautiful
from Germany. It came from Germany.
Beautiful pianos from Germany. So she can play in her grand house.
And the box, like Talia said, the box. So from what I remember, he said that it was shipped there, but by the time it got there, the house obviously was still under construction, but it never made its way to where it was supposed to go. So they were told by the people that reconstructed the house and stuff like that, you must keep this box here. So box, the wood is gorgeous. I mean, it's just sitting there in this room, which is, I guess, like the great room or whatever it was. Like, and you can see where it was supposed to be, which would have been gorgeous, but so you're sitting there and you're kind of like this house would have been gorgeous. This mansion is not even a house. And I think the total square feet was at 32,000 square feet.
Yeah, it was like 32,000 square feet. It was going to be huge.
The architect, just in case, I know we talked about the architect, but the architect did come from the East Coast. His name is Samuel Sloan. The style is octagon mode Italian villa. However, it has definitely a lot of Oriental. It was known as like the Oriental space, the Oriental home or Oriental mansion, because it has a lot of that going on. So I'm trying to find. He was a Philadelphia architect designing the home 1859 for cotton planter Haller Nutt. So Longwood is owned and operated as a historic house museum by the Pilgrimage Garden Club, and it's also available for rent. So
if you want to have your wedding there.
Yes, very, very interesting. I mean, it's a gorgeous house, but it's just, the only thing I know that they did, because I saw they had these windows, these doors that go to the main porch. Which you could see some of the pictures in the house where one or the two of the family members stood at the edge of that house. And I asked him, I saw screens, and I was like, were these screens, put here? Because I'm thinking, like you said, we are in the South, right? I'm thinking snakes, crickets, roaches, animals, possums, mosquitoes, anything you can think of, like poisonous stuff that would kill them, so I thought that these were put there, but he actually said, no, they were actually put there when they were doing the construction, because there were so many birds and other things that were in the house. It was a way for them to create a pocket door with a screen that allowed them to prevent the animals and other critters to
From
come
living
in
in there.
and stuff like that. So, and I was like, I would have put this on there if I would have thought about it. You know, if I was this person, I would have been like, can we put some screens up in here like
Facts.
this? Because I can't imagine them eating, sleeping at night, anywhere. You know, in the South, the East Coast, wherever it is, you have no heat, you have no air, you know, you have no electricity, you have no plumbing.
Well, that was the reason he said that they built those huge, obviously part of the design, but part of the functionality of it was for them to be able to have the breeze. Because you remember the port, it's on either side. It's on all the sides. So it's you got a huge one here and the air is flowing through the house to keep the breeze, to keep the house cool.
Yes. And they even had this beautiful part, which you guys can see in this video as well. From the atrium, the very top of this building, they built it so the lights, the sun would come all the way down.
That was so interesting.
To the basement, and the architecture development was stunning.
Like it was like skylights. Yeah, skylights, but the skylights, you guys, were in the basement. I mean, like you can see, yeah, because of the first floor. So the light, the way they designed it, like you can see it through the basement of where they ended up living. But that was an interesting feature. No, we're not saying, wow, we're glorifying. We're just talking about the architecture. We're not glorifying.
It is what it is. Yeah. But the fact that the slaves built that. Yeah. So, and there was a crew of architects that did come in to, obviously instruct and teach them. But I can't even imagine the level of.
Well, they had craftsmen. He did. So the architect did bring craftsmen that were particularly, that worked in this field. Yeah. Who then instructed the laborers who were the slaves on how to do things. But yes, there were craftsmen that he did bring. So yes, he did bring skilled laborers.
Don't, and I quote, "Don't worry about your tools, just set them down until you come back to finish the house." Something that would never happen. So 163 years have come and gone since they no, but there's some very interesting things, which is just about all the owners of these homes, they were Union sympathizers. So when the Union troops arrived here, the people living here who called themselves Natchezians, they just.
But if it was me and if we were the slaves, and I mean, I can't really put myself, you know what I'm saying? But if I could myself mentally where I am today, as much as I could, one, you're happy, like, I don't have to work on this no more. You know what I'm saying? But then you look at it like, the level of work and time and effort and years that they put into this. Like, I almost, for them, if it was able to be completed, you know what I'm saying? Because of all the work that the slaves put in there, I almost want to see it done because of them. To hell with the family. I'm talking about on behalf of the slaves that put in, we don't know however many, I didn't see anything that talked about how many died, how many, helped build this. I couldn't find anything. I mean, maybe we can continue to do some research, but there's like minimum data on this plantation in terms of the slaves. But I'm just sitting here like, wow. And I don't know if it was 500 slaves, 10 slaves, 20 slaves. And then.
Well,
oh, okay. I thought that he was saying, because I know there was a house there before and they were going to kind of renovate and do all this until the wife said, oh, this isn't big enough. And the husband said, this isn't big enough for her.
Yeah, he said he wanted something bigger for his new wife.
Yes, he wanted something bigger and grander and all this kind of stuff.
He was supposed to display his wealth.
Yes.
So and he lost all his wealth.
Exactly. So I do feel like, if it was to be finished, I wouldn't want it to be finished because of them. I want it to be finished because of the slaves. You know what I'm saying?
I say burn that thing down. If it were me, I would have put a torch to it. I would have burned that thing down within minutes. I like to go and look at them because of, I mean, this was a very interesting house. You don't see an octagonal house very often, but I would have been like, you burn that thing down within a minute.
Bruh. I would have
been that turner on it. Now, I don't know what I would have been because, like I said, like you said, we don't know how it feels to be oppressed in that way.
Yeah. But. Yeah. Yeah. Like, and they may, obviously they learned something from it, right? Because they worked on a historic piece as of today, 2024. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is nothing else that exists like this. Like, we've seen, you watch on HGTV and you see all these spaceships, and I built this house from a plane, and I did this, got a sphere and a glass house and all this.
Those, though.
Yeah, like I watch those and I'd be like, or the house with no windows. I'm like, who the hell want to live here? That's like, crazy. Or it's all concrete, and you like, okay, wow, but still to this day, they built something that is withstanding all the heat and all the time and things that have happened. The fact that it's all brick, like that was stunning. And like you said, it was 1 million bricks and stuff, but it's still standing and there's nothing else like it today in the United States. That's crazy.
Yeah, so, I agree. So do you think, in closing, would you recommend people to go and see this?
I would, because it's still our history. I would like to go see more. However, I do feel like they need to be honest and truthful of what really happened there. Yeah. I don't need you to tell me all the story of the kids, the grandkids, the cousins, the uncles, the daddies, the money and everything, but you never talk about how they got the money, where they got the money from. You never talk about any of that information, like as if we're going to forget us. You're not going to forget us, because you would not be here if it was not for us. Let's be real. So you can't forget that part. Don't tell half the story. Tell the whole story, nothing but the truth. So help you God. But it's the truth. Like, I don't need nobody to be dressed up in, slave attire and all this kind of stuff. Like, I
don't need you to do that. I'm good on that.
That mindset of a Black person, I put them on the same person as a Black person or a person of color who would vote for Trump. And I'm just going to be real, right? If you gonna sit over here and vote for this person, this the same person that puts on this costume that is acting like a slave. I just can't do it. Now, if you are doing something and you got to educate me, because there's just nothing in my heart that would want me. I don't care what kind of acting gig that this building. I'm not talking about in a movie and you're showcasing like a Django. You're right. I ain't talking about something that's in an action show or whatever. This is like every day you are getting up and you're going here to act like a slave to be on this plantation that we were fighting to get the hell off of. You know what I'm saying? Like his blood and everything else. And you waking up every day to go work for this plantation again. I just don't understand. I can't understand it. I can't. And I ain't gonna never probably be able. Somebody's gonna have to educate me. I'm open to hearing that. If anybody understands, you've been in that position. If you're the type of person where you're like, oh yeah, I'll go on and been the maid. Help me understand, because I can't.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, I don't know. I'm sure they could maybe tell us. Maybe they have some kind of connection to it. I don't really know. Maybe they couldn't find another job. Maybe there's limited amount of jobs, and that was the only place that was hiring. Hey man, if you live in where that area of Frogmore is, it ain't no jobs over there. I'm serious. So maybe they couldn't. Maybe that was the only place that was hiring. Okay. I don't really know, buddy. I'm just trying to like where that place is. There's like literally no jobs. So I don't know. Maybe that was the only thing they could do. But I also had one more question. There was a lady though. There was a lady that if you watch her, she's on YouTube and she does recreate the life of. Now, see, I think that's an interesting thing that they should keep in there. Like if she does recreate everything that you would wear, what she would have looked like, if she worked during this time period as this, and I think she said like a lady's maid was her job. She was recreating, so she puts on all the clothes of what it would have looked like. She even has like I think like a teapot, and it shows where she would have lived. So I think that those types of things are interesting. So you saying you wouldn't want to see that at all in a historical context. I don't mean out there somebody whipping you and it's like I mean that
This some realness right here, boy.
like come on now. I don't mean that, but
Oh, okay, let me read.
No, you're right. I don't want to see it.
I can't.
Because then they would have to dress up in their costumes.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, no.
This is what I would have liked to see at Longwood or any other plantation place. If it had to be someone in costume, right? I walk over, I see there is basically like a tour guide, right? She may be dressed in her slave gown or robe or whatever she has, right? She's standing there. Maybe she has another person with her. Maybe it's her husband or something. They didn't allow us to get married, but it's her other person, her lover. What would be acceptable to me is if they told us their story from their perspective in that slave house. You know, they are telling me they don't necessarily have to say massa said, I would get it. You know what I'm saying? But if they told us their story of, I have to wake up at this time and I have to do this. I'm responsible for this. I had to do this. Like if they told me somebody's story of who was physically on that plantation or whom we assume was on that plantation, and it was separate from, I walk in the big house and I see a 12-year-old or I'm 18-year-old or something like that, who is being talked to in a white woman or by a white man in their garb, and they're sitting over here literally acting out a scene that is definitely disrespectful and very uncomfortable, right? Yes. For not just people of color, this could be anybody. You know what I'm saying? That absolutely not. I don't need to see that dynamic. And correct. That's what I mean. I don't need to see the belittling. I don't need to see that bull crap, because that is a no for me. You know what I'm saying? So if you separate the two, even though that was not history, I don't need to see that part. We get that part. I want to know, how did you live? What did you do? What was your story? That I can as an educational part.
And then, I want to see where you live. Don't tear down don't tear down there's so many of them torn down, but don't tear down the quarters. We want to see that compared to the big house. I want to see all of that, how they were forced to live. Yeah. They should have left all of that so we could see that. So they need to talk about it.
And you guys, I did ask, I said, well, where did the slaves stay? Because I thought we were going to get like a tour of the actual plantation.
That's what I thought when we go outside, but that was the end.
It's acres. Okay. Like acres of land. And he was like, oh, well, over there is the family's cemetery. And I was like, the slave cemetery?
I was like, I don't
care. And they were like, yeah, and I was just kind of like, okay, but I said, sorry, so where did the slaves live? And it was kind of like a deer in headlights for a minute. Then he was like, oh, well, they would have stayed inside of the brick house that was right here, which is a house next to the house. It's a small house next to the house. And then there's actually where it's the oldest building in Natchez, or a structure in Natchez, which is Carriage House, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they had historical stuff in there. They have the tools in there, and they told you what it was and all this kind of stuff, whatever. But next to there, they actually had, even where they had updated, and they actually put the restroom in there for tour purposes and stuff. But he goes, yeah, well, they would have been inside of, this house right here. That's actually where the family stayed while the house was under construction. So they never really had the opportunity to have the actual slaves stay in there. Okay, so are you gonna answer my damn question? You didn't
Yeah,
answer.
I just I'm like, what is it? I don't know. Maybe they feel like they're just trying to not upset anyone.
By upsetting me.
Yes. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why they have been instructed to do so. But anyway, they are rebranding it, and it's weird because they're doing it with other houses in the same area in Natchez. They're calling them historic houses
Mm-hmm.
and historic inns, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to what they are and what they were, and it was a plantation. That's what they need to be called, and that's what they need to talk about. So,
Would you ever want to, if you had the funds to, would you ever buy one?
okay, this is a complex answer, and I might get some hate for it, and then we'll decide if we're going to put it on. But
Real. Would you have $20 million? And of that, which I'm like, hey, are you going to buy a plantation? Are you going to buy one of these antebellum homes? It may be Natchez, it could be New Orleans, it could be Shreveport, it could be wherever it is. Would you buy one?
I feel like any Black person who has, I think that they would be able to, they have just as much right as anyone else because that would be part of their history. I don't know why in particular you would want to own one because of the history. But then again, maybe that's why you would do it because you're like, I can own it now. So,
Yes.
you know, I bought it. You know, so but I don't know. It's such a. I mean, some people are probably screaming, "Hell no, that's strange." But then at the same time, then you can look at it because I was thinking of, and I know how people may feel about Tyler Perry, but he did where he built his studio was actually a Confederate port, if I'm not mistaken, where he built his studio. I think it's in Georgia.
Yeah.
And he bought it, but it used to be an old Confederate. You have to look it up.
Oh, wow.
Maybe you can insert it here. And he built his studio on that. So you can repurpose it for that reason. If you're looking at it, so that's why I say I can see it in both ways. I can see it where some people are like, no, that's ridiculous. And where other people are like, I bought it. So you can see, I can see it in both ways. I don't know if I personally would do it. I feel like maybe it's too much negativity I want the space that I inhabit to feel good. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Like, I'm not really sure.
You couldn't live there?
Like, what if the slaves wake up and are like, you know, what you doing in here?
Or what if they wake up and they say, thank you? You know, this is our sweat.
That's why I say I can see it in both ways. But I mean, but I'm saying, like, what if it's a spirit of an oppressed person that is still there? But you know, I believe in all that kind of stuff.
Y'all were oppressed.
Yeah, but I'm saying like I mean, that's what I'm saying. So
yeah. I don't know.
I'm waking up, go down, Moses, you know.
Yeah. And you know what? What's funny is Natchez has over 300 antebellum homes. Again, that means pre-Civil War homes, and of which I did learn when being down there that over 100 and there's some families, majority of the families from over 150 years ago, it's still in their family. So it's so many homes, you guys, that are actually for sale in Natchez. Like,
because people are dying out.
People are dying out, and their great grandkids and nieces and all that. They're like, I don't want to be here. Like, no, it is a gorgeous place. It is like a baby New Orleans, you know, and it used to be Bowman, you know, back in the day. And it's a lot of wonderful Black history that is there. We have family that was a part of that history and stuff. So the Mackle Funeral Home, we actually toured that while we were there. My cousin broke down and taught me so much. There is a structure that actually talks about the voting situation that happened there, where there were so many people, Black people, that went there to go and vote. They were given laxatives during that time. And actually my great uncle tried to create the or our great uncle tried to create the NAACP, and he was run out by the KKK for fear of his life. But then a couple, about 10, 20 years later or so, it was finally structured. So there's a lot of history there. So if you're a historic person, I would highly recommend you go to Natchez. I would highly recommend you go there and tour. And I enjoyed my time. I enjoyed being with my own family and whatnot. But what I will say is, it was a little heartbreaking for us to go through this entire scenario. I wish that they could be retrained or somebody educate my cousin and I in terms of, hey, why was this left out? What happened? But it is what it is. But other than that, you guys, I just want to say it was great to be here. Stay tuned. Please let us know. Comment below. Would you want to own a plantation? Would you want to go tour a plantation? Tell us about your experiences when you have gone to these different locations, whether it's in DC or that East Coast, Northeast, down all the way down to the South, the Southeast, wherever it is. Do you live in a location that is like that? We want to hear about that. And how do you feel about people that are dressed up in this attire that are acting out these different scenes and stuff like that? I don't know. So we have mixed feelings. We kind of get it both ways, but we want to hear from you. If you're interested also in being a guest, or you want to send us your opinion, you don't really want to comment below, please email us at 50shadesoflife@gmail.com. That is 50sha8des of life@gmail.com. We are always looking for sponsors and guests. We're looking for more ideas. Please comment below. Let us know what you think. Watch the video as we talked about Longwood as well. But again, thank you guys so much. And we love you guys. See ya.
My own black business, running up these dishes, fresher than them dishes.
Talia, grant your wishes. I'm a tarot reading witness.
Yeah.